Hip flexors. Here we're just in the lunge position. The things to note is that I'm up straight, got a nice tall neutral spine. That back leg is majority of where the weight is, and on that back leg I'm squeezing the glute and really trying to push through at the hip, and that will really intensify the stretch. The front foot, you want it to be at a right angle. And here the same concept applies. The weight's on that back leg and you're really pushing through on that back leg and squeezing at the glute. Here obviously with the elevated feet you can get deeper into the stretch. This one here is just a little bit more involved. You're really going to be struggling for your balance, and the instability here is why this exercise is so powerful, because the instability makes you recruit more muscle fibers. So you're really going to build more strength and open that hip quicker using this progression. Generally, when you've got tight hip flexors, you're going to have tight quads. I like doing these leg extensions. The easiest progression is just using a band for some assistance until you feel comfortable doing them with just your body weight. So if you didn't need the band, don't use it obviously, but just work your way up to, you want to get your ligaments and cartilages used to that kind of stress before jumping straight into it if you haven't done a lot of this kind of stuff in the past, because it's risky business doing this kind of stuff. You really got to listen to your body, but the body is pretty amazing and it adapts pretty quickly. So here I'm just really just playing around, trying to get in that back position, really stretching out the quads. The next part, after you've done the knee extensions, you can do negatives like I'm doing here, and when you get in that bottom position, I'm pushing into the floor with the front of my foot and squeezing the glutes, and the stretch you get on your quads is really intense, and it's building strength as well because you're really pushing and building resistance through pushing into the ground. And this is the ultimate test of strength and flexibility in the quads, which is what we're trying to do here with these stretches, not just build flexibility but strength as well. You've probably heard the cue when squatting, spread the knees. What they mean when they say that is they're really saying externally rotate the hip, which really turns on the glutes. Someone with tight hip flexors and a tight glute medius is going to be a quad dominant athlete or mover, and that's why these stretches here are important, because they're opening up the glute medius, which is going to help you externally rotate the hip. And all these stretches, these couple that I'm showing you here, the same concept applies. You're building resistance by pushing into the ground, and they're really going to open up the hip. Here is just a stretch that I play around with. I lock my opposite elbow with the opposite knee and really turn into the stretch, but I'm pushing into the ground with that front foot. The hip abductor and hamstrings. This movement right here really helped me open up my groin and abductor area. It helped me get into that deep position for when I started doing Olympic lifts. And obviously as you progress, you can go deeper into it like I'm doing here. And if you can't even do that, you may need to hold on to something in front of you, onto a sturdy object, until you get the balance and get used to the movement. What I'm doing here with the barbell is called the hip hinge. If you don't know what that is, Google that shit because it's important. The hip hinge is pretty much, opens up movements such as the kettlebells, deadlifts, the Olympic lifts. They all involve the hip hinge, and it's a good way to lengthen your hamstring and build strength at the same time. As obviously you increase the weight, the more of the stretch and more strength you're going to build. But you want to learn the hip hinge before doing the single leg RDLs, which I'm doing here, and this is really gonna open up your hamstring and strengthen it at the same time. And what I love about it is that it also acts as a glute activation exercise. And again, because of you're on one foot, there's a lot of instability, and you're going to recruit more muscle fibers, and you're going to really induce some strength and flexibility. And here, notice how my knee, it's not caving in. I'm externally rotating the hip. That's important because most people want to cave in at the knee. So you've got to force that knee outward.